The United States of America had stayed out of World War II until on December 7th, 1941, Japan, hoping to stop an American attack before it started, struck the American naval base of Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. The Japanese intent was to destroy America's entire Pacific Fleet at once. The result of this action was to bring the United States into the war. For the next 3.5 years, President Franklin D. Roosevelt was the leader of the American war effort. On April 12, 1945, he suffered a massive stroke and died. Vice President Harry Truman was sworn in as President of the United States and charged with ending the Pacific War. Before his death, Roosevelt had authorized a top-secret operation known as the Manhattan Project. Led by Robert Oppenheimer, the Manhattan Project was a 3-year-long, $2 billion operation that resulted in the development of an atomic bomb. The first atomic bomb ever detonated was called Gadget. Gadget was tested in the New Mexican desert. The atomic bomb was originally intended for use against the Nazis, but they were defeated without it. However, the more stubborn Japanese continued the war. It was very clear that they would fight to the last man. In June of 1945, the Americans won the very bloody Battle of Okinawa. The next step was an invasion of the Japanese mainland. Now, President Truman faced a very nerve-wracking decision. If he invaded the Japanese homeland, it would result in the deaths of at least 500,000 soldiers on each side. Or he could use America's newest weapon, which, in addition to massive casualties, would torture and mutilate hundreds of thousands of Japanese civilians and soldiers. Most of Truman's military advisors despised an invasion. All of the scientists who created the atomic bomb despised its use. President Truman had to decide, 100,000 or 1 million. Eventually, to, quote, spare the Japanese from utter destruction, Truman decided to use the bombs. On August 4th, a B-29 bomber named Enola Gay sat on the runway at Tinian Island, the largest airfield in the world, as soldiers loaded on an atomic bomb. The bomb was called Little Boy. Little Boy's method of operation involved using gunpowder to force together 2 pieces of uranium-235 to start an explosive nuclear reaction. The target was Hiroshima, a major military base that was to play a key role in defense against the American invasion. The mission? To destroy it in one shot. However, the mission was postponed due to heavy clouds over Hiroshima. The next day, the 5th, a plane with the same design as Enola Gay crashed on the runway. The attack was postponed yet another day for repairs and safety checks. No one wanted to risk the bomb going off at Tinian, because if it did, it would incinerate at least half the island, and America's Pacific Air Force with it. Finally, on August 6th, at 3 a.m. Guam Standard Time, the Enola Gay, under the command of Colonel Paul Tibbets, left Tinian on its risky flight to Hiroshima. Six hours later, at 8:16 a.m. Japanese Standard Time, the world changed. Little Boy was dropped on Hiroshima. Within seconds, the city was incinerated. The temperature on the ground rose to over 7,000 degrees Fahrenheit. A fireball 900 feet wide rose into the air. 73,000 people were incinerated. The explosion produced a shockwave that moved at the speed of sound and was felt up to 4 miles away from the hypocenter. It was so powerful that anyone who wasn't inside a building was vaporized. Shadows of many victims were forever imprinted where they last stood. Eyewitness accounts state that shortly after the explosion, the sunlight was gone, the city was covered in smoke, and the streets were filled with corpses. Many survivors were so mutilated by the bomb that they didn't even look human. Other survivors had their skin torn off by the shockwave. After the bombing, Truman gave the Japanese a chance to surrender, saying,
"Do not now accept our terms. They may expect a rain of ruin from the air, the like of which has never been seen on this earth."
Despite the sudden and shocking loss, the Japanese remained silent. 3 days later, on August 9th, another atomic bomb named Fat Man was loaded onto the B-29 bomber Bockscar. Like Gadget, Fat Man functioned by surrounding a low-density ball of plutonium with conventional explosives. Once the conventional explosives were activated, they compressed the plutonium enough for it to go critical and cause a nuclear reaction. Just before takeoff, the Bockscar was discovered to have a broken fuel pump. Replacing the pump would take hours, while moving Fat Man to a different plane could set it off. So Bockscar continued with its mission. At 3:49 a.m. Guam time, the Bockscar, under the command of a Major Charles Sweeney, left Tinian with a broken fuel pump and headed for Kokura. Upon arrival, Bockscar found Kokura concealed by clouds from a nearby firebombing attack. Unable to spot their target, Bockscar moved to its backup target, Nagasaki. Nagasaki, however, was shrouded by naturally occurring clouds. The Bockscar was about to leave when, suddenly, the clouds momentarily broke, revealing their target. At 11:01 a.m. Japanese time, Fat Man exploded over Nagasaki and vaporized 37,500 people. The next day, fearing another atomic bomb, Emperor Hirohito, the Japanese leader, informed the Allied governments that Japan would surrender. The Japanese officially surrendered on August 12th. A formal surrender was signed on September 2nd, 1945, aboard the USS Missouri, a ship which had survived the attack at Pearl Harbor. 7 years and 1 day after Hitler invaded Poland, the Second World War had ended. Today, there is a memorial at Hiroshima known as the Peace Park. There is a plaque inscribed with this quote, "Rest in peace. The mistake will not be